everybody, and welcome to Time Traveling Shenanigans of Top Deck Bots. For those who don't know, my name is LevDev. I usually like to do fun, janky brew, as well as provide some fun card insights of cards from various Magic the Gathering sets. And this time, we're going to get a little bit wibbly-wobbly, timey-wimey with the upcoming Universes Beyond Doctor Who. Now, context here. For me, I actually watch Doctor Who. I'm a Whovian, as they call it. I kept up with a majority of the modern season. I still need to catch up with some of the classic season and such. Only a few, holiday specials of the modern season I still need to catch up with, as well as some episodes I missed from the Capaldi one during the time when I watched it in college. But nevertheless, I'm a big fan of it. It's a lot of things. Doctor Who can be both very emotional, it can be silly, it can even be outright infuriating at times. But it brings a lot of passion from its fan base and its community, and it's great that they actually brought the development team were all big Whovian fans, and you could tell with the product. There was a lot of nice personal touches, just little nods, little Easter eggs, even the fact that you could see it in little touches like all the sagas in the set are actually episodes of the corresponding Doctor and even some of the featured villains. I love this. I think it's probably one of my favorite supplemental Beyond Universes set, probably so far. Well, at least until they release the Fallout one, and, we'll see how those rank, but, nevertheless, love what they did with it, and we're going to I was originally going to try to do the top 10 cards of every precon, but due to time constraints, to try to get this out on time, as well as not wanting to stress me and the editor, we're just going to stick to what I think is, personally, my top 10 cards from the upcoming Doctor Who set. There's a bunch of time travel, there's some doctors, there is also some dinosaurs. What shenanigans shall we see? Well, let's get started, shall we? Now, before we get started with the top 10, I did want to mention some honorable mentions, mostly some cards that didn't make the list, but I thought they were just nifty inclusions to talk about, nevertheless. So, the honorable mentions is, first off, one of the fan favorite companions, which would be Rose Tyler. Rose Tyler is a very powerful card within the timey-wimey precon, just the ability of her to get bigger every time that you do a time counter manipulation, which you're going to do a lot in the deck, especially with the time travel mechanic that they come with the set, which allows you to add and remove time counters on permanents and suspended spells. This 2-drop gets big very quick. Also, for the moment, we're also going to talk about the moment. Pun, just wordplay pun aside, this is actually a very powerful board wipe spell that can also be a semi-protection spell with your permanents. It reminds me of just some of the equivalents that we have in here. Kind of like similarity at Oblivion Stone or like at a Ratchet Bomb, some variant of that. So, a very powerful card. It'll be kind of interesting to see if it sticks into any other deck besides the timey-wimey precon. And, of course, we have to put at least one Doctor on the honorable mention, the 11th Doctor. Very powerful card. The ability to give itself unblockable is pretty good, as well as the combat damage trigger, being able to sneak something with Suspend. Anybody who messes with Joyler from Time Spiral knows how powerful this effect can be, especially if you try to essentially sneak, an Eldrazi with time counters on it and just have the ticking clock. Plus, also, if I'm not going to lie, the reason why I put the 11th Doctor on the honorable mention is, honestly, so I could say that it is the 11th on the list. Okay, somewhere I think Hermit Druid is just now shrugging. Nevertheless, let's actually get to the list, shall we?
Number 10.
For number 10 on this list, we gotta go with a classic Doctor Who companion. You love him, you think he's a good doggo, and that is K9. K9 is a very powerful 1-drop for the Blast from the Past Historic Matters precon. Also, it's just very good for Legendary Matters shenanigan decks, because the fact that it gives all your legendary creatures Ward 1, is a very strong ability, as well as just being able to make a creature unblockable. That's a Rogue's Passage. We know how good Rogue's Passage is, so number 10 on the list, I had to put the good doggo here somewhere. So, number 10, K9.
Number 9.
Number 9 on this list, and I had to go with this card mostly because of the art, but we gotta talk about Ecstatic Beauty. Now, for those of you who don't know why we have Van Gogh in the art here, this is because this is from a fan favorite episode, and also emotionally devastating. Go bring your tissues when you watch this. From Vincent and the Doctor. A very touching episode. Also, they gave at least that episode a good nod with actually a pretty strong card. Now, granted, paying 3 mana for this effect is a little bit but the fact that you do have the suspend cost on this is actually very strong, putting 4 time counters on it, and then later down the line, have the impulse draw, and then if you have any suspend spells, being able to just get those automatically suspended. Very nice touch. It's a very, simple card, simple to the point, but really, the reason why this card is on this list is because the art. I mean, Alex just did an amazing job on this piece. If you even see, the extended art of this piece, you see more details, and it just mimics Van Gogh's style so elegantly. It's a great, and it's a beautiful piece to talk about the beautiful sadness and happiness of Vincent and the Doctor. So, chef's kiss. Number 8 on this list, and this one I'm going to be cheating just a little bit, and I'm actually just going to say, well, dinosaurs. Specifically from Free of the Precons, we actually got new dinosaur cards and such, because Doctor Who did have interactions with dinosaurs. Yes, really. Nevertheless, we have dinosaurs on a spaceship, Displace Dinosaur, as well as Framing Tyrannosaurus. Now, all these free cards have their unique strengths, but the one that we're probably going to say is probably the powerfulest of the bunch for the specific deck it wants to be in is probably Dinosaurs on a Spaceship. This is if you play Dino Typo Shenanigans. This is a very good card, being able to generate the hasty dinosaur tokens, as well as in generally get the Lord type of effect. Pretty much anybody who plays dinosaur typo decks are going to love this. Also, the factor that Caverns of Ixalan is around the corner. Yeah, this is probably the one that people are going to keep their eyes on. The strongest, though, of the bunch, just by itself, for probably multiple deck designs, is probably Displaced Dinosaur. This is just a silly Magic the Gathering card. Being able to make your historic permanents, which for those who don't know, historic permanents are artifacts, sagas, planeswalkers, and any legendary permanent. So essentially, when those enter the battlefield, they become 7/7 dinosaurs. I'm just going to say this blunt. I hope I pull a Surge Foil of this in the Collector Box opening, which I'll be opening sometime this weekend as of this recording. Or just get any pulls of them, because I'm going to put that first thing into Gimbal to make my little gremlin tokens into dinosaurs. That's going to be amazing. Now, there is a little bit of a catch that people have to keep in mind with this card. Note too, when the factor that some permanents, when they change into creatures, if they weren't originally creatures, they will have summoning sickness. So yes, you can do your Dockside Extortionist and make a bunch of dinosaurs, but note, you're not going to have the benefit of the fast mana from Dockside Extortionist, since all those treasures are going to become creatures, and thus have the summoning sickness. Unless you have a haste-like ability within your deck design, such as Mass Hysteria or Concordant Crossroads. So, something to keep in mind there. Nevertheless, also, the Flaming Tyrannosaurus, while probably the less the bunch, this is still a very strong card. Pretty much if you play any Exile-based deck design, Prosper. You're pretty much are looking at this card without a sweat, because the ability to, at any time when you play a card from anywhere other than your hand, which Prosper does that a lot, you have the ability to burn things. I mean, you're playing Prosper, you're going to have damage-dealing shenanigans. You're going to love the Flaming Tyrannosaurus threats. So, nevertheless, number 9 on this list, or was it 8? Dinosaurs.
7.
Number 7 on this list, and probably one of the more powerful blue removal spells that we have got from this set, and that has to be Cyber Conversion. Now, what Cyber Conversion does is essentially it morphs your creature, or in this case, turns it into a Cyberman, taking out all their emotions, feelings, and such. Doctor Who lore. But this is a very powerful effect, because this is essentially more or less kind of like an Imprison in the Moon-like effect, or essentially, I always forget the name, Darksteel Mutation effect on a creature, including opponent's commanders. So being able to transform it into a Cyberman with no abilities, that's just great removal in general. That could help us with some very tricky to interact with commanders. Looking at you, Corvo, looking at you, Chulane. You know which commanders I'm talking about, where you want to just not put it back in the command zone, but just as long as it's a body on the battlefield, no worries. Bada-ba-dee, bada-ba-doo. So, yeah, number 7 on this list, we gotta put the Cyber Conversion.
Number 6.
Number 6 on this list, and always a good description of the Tardis, which is bigger on the inside. Now, bigger on the inside doesn't look like much. It looks like just, oh, your classic, hey, let's make either a land or either, in this case, a Tardis, flavor win, pretty much into a ability to get mana, which then you could also make an opponent get mana, which is actually pretty nifty if you're doing, like, group hug, politics, or doing, like, mana burn of some variation with that one commander that I always forget the name of. It's the Viashino, essentially. Still, nevertheless, the reason why we're talking about bigger on the inside is because there's actually a silly combo with this card. And specifically, it is with Pilapala. Now, for those of you who don't know, since the factor that technically bigger on the inside can be attached to artifacts, you can attach Pilapala with bigger on the inside and such, and what happens is, since Pilapala has a 2-mana untap ability, the combo is pretty simple. You put bigger on the inside on the Pilapala, you tap it for the mana that you get from bigger on the inside, untap of Pilapala's effect, and the factor that it has the ability that when you activate it, the next spell you're going to gain has Cascade, thanks to bigger on the inside. You essentially tap, untap, tap, untap, tap, untap as many times as you want, and essentially you do infinite Cascade triggers, which could make you, depending on how much mana you sink into the next spell you cast, specifically give, like, so many Cascade triggers and pretty much just, like, get your whole deck out on the battlefield. Very absurd, but also in general, even if you're not doing kind of like the degenerate combo shenanigans, it is nice to have just a versatile aura to help you ramp, even at that mana cost. So, the fact that it does give you Cascade, though, is a nice touch on your next spell. Nevertheless, number 6 on the list, bigger on the inside. Number 5 on this list, and it's probably one of the more scarier cards on this list. Well, that's not high on the list, I guess, to clarify. And that's got to be the Cyberman Squadron. This card is silly. Giving all your artifact creatures Myriad is a very powerful ability. Like being able to attack in, say, with a Solum Simulacrum, aka our sad robot, and be able to get multiple ETBs when you attack your other opponents with the Myriad copies. Very saucy. Also, there's just like other good ETB artifact creatures to gain value from, like if you need removal, Meteor Golem, for example. I mean, in the history of Magic, there's just a bunch of good ETB artifact creatures, and just being able to get those with Myriad is just ridiculously absurd. And there's even a way potentially to keep those Myriad tokens, but that would be kind of spoilers. Actually, would be me saying spoilers would be spoilers from the next card that's on the list. Well, nevertheless, number 5 on the list is the Cyberman Squadron. Number 4 on this list, and you could probably, anyone who's Whovian in the audience will probably know what's coming up, but number 4, it's gotta be Riverson. Riverson is a really cool character in Doctor Who. It is the Doctor's wife, and the premise is essentially the Doctor's wife, essentially, they kind of experience time in reverse kind of scenario, where the Doctor just sees Riverson at a later period, while Riverson at earlier periods see Doctors at the later period. It's just kind of a very, very interesting story, just seeing the dynamic of that. Nevertheless, Riverson is just a really cool legendary creature as well. Being able to draw cards from the bottom of your library is just a flavor. when, as well as spoilers, is while you can't take full advantage of that, the fact that that can be nifty tech if you're in a playgroup that likes to scry or surveil or tutor a lot, just having the ability to be like a incremental being like, you sure you want to scry? You sure you want to tutor? You want that tutor to cause some damage to the face? So just having that little bit of political aspect of that is sort of nice. And if you must want to brew around that, you can do stuff like Field of Ruin or even any of the land destruction spells to essentially make your opponent forced to look for a land, which thus, due to the effect, will trigger Riversong's spoiler ability. Nevertheless, number 4 on the list, it had to be Riversong. Number 3 on the list, and this is probably one of the cooler villains on the list, and it's a two-way tie. For me, from the villains list, there's really actually more of a three-way tie. Technically, there's some really cool ones, that, like, for example, there's Missy, which a lot of people have already been thinking of some silly shenanigans with morph-based shenanigans. There is also Ashad, a personal favorite of mine. Just being able to just give your non-creature artifact spells casualty is a very strong effect. But if we had to go to the specific villain that had to get on the list and one of the more scarier cards, number 3, it had to be the Master Multiplied. The Master Multiplied is just, like all villains, they like to break the rules, and boy does this one break the rules. So, the Master Multiply essentially has Myriad, and also has the ability that legendary tokens do not get applied to the legendary role, which is very important if you want to get multiple Masters on the battlefield. But also that last clause that makes it where any triggered ability on a token, if it sacrifices or exile, will not happen. Now, a lot of people are mistaking this and misread this part. This is only applies to tokens, so you can't do, like, oh, sneak attack in a giant Emrakul and you don't have to sack it. No, that's not how it works. This is mostly only applies to tokens. However, there is some very strong cards to just essentially that are temporary tokens that you attack with and then they get exiled. That is actually gets strong, the fact that you don't have to exile or sack them thanks to the Master and Multiply. So, for example, like Urabrask's Forge, making all those Phyrexian creatures being able to not have to be sacked at the end of the turn, that can incrementally get silly very quick. I could list off the total amount of token generators that generate like a temporary token that's mostly aggressive oriented, but then you have to sack it at the end step. There's even just cards that in general, like Kiki Jiki, Fable the Mirror Breaker, Flame Conjuring. Like, there's a ton, and I mean a ton of cards that give you temporary tokens. And before, we had to do, if we wanted to keep those tokens, like with Myriad tokens, as well as these type of tokens, we had to do, like, Sundial the Infinite shenanigans, where we end the turn before the tokens would be, quote-unquote, go away. But now, thanks to the Master Multiply, we can keep those tokens for as long as it's on the battlefield. And the fact that the Master Multiply makes multiple copies of themselves makes it very hard for the opponent to actually remove it other than a board wipe. So, yeah. Number 3, there were some great villains, but if I had to choose one, it had to be the Master Multiplied. Number 2 on this list, and this is a personal fan favorite character of mine, and it's gotta be Strats. Now, for those who don't know, Strats is a Sotoran nurse that is part of a team that consists of him, as well as one of the leaders, Madame Vastra, which is pretty much a lizard lady that's also a detective, as well, forgive me for forgetting the name of her species, I'm having a brain fart on it, as well as Ginny, who is also Madame Vastra's lover. Pretty much they both got cards in the set. They are really cool cards. But personally, one of my favorite characters, though, is Strats. Strats is kind of like a comedic relief character. Also has some really cool moments. And it's one of the characters that when... Okay, context here. I think I need to provide context for this one. During my college years, that's when I started watching Doctor Who, and I actually was part of a watch party, essentially. And we kind of did the conversation of what character is most like you, and a lot of people during my college years would say I was more like Strats. So, take that as you will. Nevertheless, this is kind of like a fun, kind of like casual, kind of like stomping commander, where essentially it has very flavorful abilities of essentially being able to, when you sacrifice an artifact, being able to quote unquote fight something and potentially actually fight one of your own fiends, which is totally on flavor for strat. So like that is just like chef's kiss of flavor. And also the ability that whenever it deals damage to anything, nope, not combat damage, but damage to any creature, it gets bigger, which is very nice. You could do some like make strats into a peener and peen creatures constantly potentially, and just make strats into a very big stompy threat. Is it the strongest card from the Doctor Who precons? No, I mean everybody will probably be saying something along the lines of Everybody Lives or something along that line, or even Nano Gene Conversion. But this is my list, and for number 2, it's got to be my buddy Strats.
Number 1.
My number 1 card from the Doctor Who precons, and this is going to be cheating a lot, but I feel like this is the perfect way to summarize my number 1 Doctor Who cards, and that is honestly all of the Doctors as well as all of the Doctor companions. Now, I'm going to use this to do a little clarification here since I've seen a little bit of confusion of this. The Doctor Companion mechanic, what essentially is you can partner with any of these following 15 Doctors, potentially 17 since we are going to actually get 2 more Doctors in the future, but nevertheless, you can partner with any of these Doctors. So basically the best way to remember this is essentially just if it's the blank Doctor, you pretty much can partner up with it with any of the companions. So like the first Doctor, the second Doctor, the Fugitive Doctor, the War Doctor, etc., etc., etc. It's a very powerful ability, and just having all the companions that we get from these precons, as well as all these Doctors that have very powerful and unique synergies and fun abilities, it's just amazing to see all the combos you can do and just kind of like how you can brew your deck, even within precons themselves. Like, one of the strengths that I would say, like, with the Blast from the Past precon is the fact that it has, like, about 8 Doctors in it. And the fact that you have all those companions with it, since they're doing a historic synergy, just the amount of unique little combos you can do of changing, like, let's say, to the Sixth Doctor and, like, Ramona 2, and just go, like, with a token-based strategy to make a bunch of multiple historic permanents, potentially multiple Doctors to get multiple triggers of the Doctors, and then essentially just being able to more or less maybe win with, like, the Gallifrey stands, which is, like, try to get 13 Doctors on the battlefield. That's just, oh, so amazing. So, but I know what all of you are saying. You're, like, saying, that's cheating, Jordan. If you had to choose one Doctor and one companion, I'm going to tie to say 2 on each. Just say one of them is a favorite of mine, as well as the other ones just I like mechanically, so let's go with that. If I had to choose between 2 Doctors and 2 companions, what are they? Well, for Doctors, I had to go with the 6th Doctor, as well as the 12th Doctor. 12th Doctor, just the ability to give your first spell you cast from anywhere other than your hand demonstrate, is a very powerful ability, especially since you can actually kind of like do some trolling shenanigans, like maybe you cast like a spell that you want your opponent to cast a copy of that's more detrimental to them than to you. I think Veggie Wagon did a whole post about that, essentially. And then the 6th Doctor, I mean, you saw me all talked about its combo with Ramona and such, and how you can pretty much copy in historic permanence. It's a rather silly ability, like, imagine 2 Aetherflux Reservoirs. Enough said. Now for companions, this one's going to be a little bit different. The one companion, and it's still my favorite companion of the series, and I also love the design of this companion, it has to be Donna Noble. This is just an amazing design, just being able to make essentially your creatures into stuffy dolls. That is very on flavor for Donna, since Donna likes to just retaliate and fight back. Just chef's kiss on the flavor on that. I love that. And there's just some fun shenanigans of just doing stuffy doll-like effects within your deck design. And then if I had to go with probably my favorite mechanical companion, I think it's the best one that they did to help out with these precons in general, it's gotta be Clara. Clara, the Impossible Girl. Oh my, this is so great that they made a colorless companion that you can actually choose a color for. So that way, if you want to go off color with any of the doctors and such, then from their pre-con, all you just need is a Clara to companion with one of the doctors, and then you can choose a color. Like, if you want to do 12 Dr. Gritzes, there you go. If you want to do, like, 12 Doctor, essentially, like, Teamer, just get Clara. Like, it's just great that they actually put this touch in there just to allow for the versatility to take full advantage of this. Plus, also Clara giving the ability that your Doctor's triggers activate an additional time. Very powerful ability. Like I said, all the Doctors are very powerful cards in general, and those with triggered abilities are also very strong if you get an additional trigger of them. So, yeah. If I had to go with my number one, it has to be the Doctors and Companions. You saw what the top two of each were, but still, just, these were lovingly designed, and it's just great just to see all of them, so. And that is my top 10, no, a little bit more if we're being honest, cards from the Doctor Who pre-cons from the Universes Beyond set. Now, before we conclude, I do want to make actually a personal note to the people who designed this set, and honestly, I just wanted to say, thank you. This is an amazing product you made. It's just great to see all the details, all kind of like the references to moments in the show, all the great moments, the silly moments, and just being able to just see all the character designs onto cards and how you interpreted the characters, just amazing. You put some of my favorite episodes into cards. I mean, the fact of how you did the whole Blink design being out of order sagas, just to reference the flavor of how that episode was kind of like out of order due to the wibbly wobbly, timely wobbly shenanigans. Just, I love all the heart you put into this. Even in the reprints, just being able to show and just pretty much show classic Doctor Who settings and scenes, and with some very memorable quotes like, I love this. I love all that you did to this. You showed all your heart into this, and it's easily to be seen. I appreciate what you did. You made a really good product. Just let you know, you made a really, really good product. Or if we want to quote a classic Doctor Who episode, people's lives, there's going to be good stuff and the bad stuff. And I'll be frank, with the Doctor Who Beyond universe, you added a lot of good stuff in my life with this. And I appreciate that all that you did. Whether through the good and the bad you had to do to get this product to be made, I appreciate what you did. Thank you for your hard work. I hope you all have, of course everyone else as well, I hope you all have a lovely day. As they say, hip hip hooray.